I want to finish up here on the Putin situation, then get into the global treaty.
Yeah.
Here is a clip of Putin, not just the article, where a few days ago he said a lot of the G20 countries being attacked by terrorists have actually been involved supporting ISIS. Let's go to that clip.
The reporter asked Putin, as far as I understand, one of the central themes during the summit has become the fight against terrorism. And it is evident that we cannot have an effective war on terrorism without the fight against the ones who finance the terrorists. Has there been any discussion during the summit of any specific ways to do so? What were the points of the discussion, and were there any decisions reached?
Yes, of course. This was one of the key subjects, the war on terrorism. Especially after the tragic events of hostage-taking and deaths of people in Paris. And of course, we all understand and spoke about this, that it is necessary to cut the finance routes to the terrorist organizations. I provided examples based on our data on the financing of different Islamic State units by private individuals. This money, as we have established, comes from 40 countries, and there are some of the G20 members among them.
All right, now that's more truth from Putin. Again, I'm not some Russia worshiper here, but he's attacking ISIS. He's saying global warming is a concerted fraud to bankrupt nation states and impoverish people and selectively enforce feudalism, to read his full quotes. It sounds like he's been listening to Lord Monckton. How big a deal is it to have Vladimir Putin come out when he's going to be one of the main people at this UN conference that starts in 12 days in Paris? How big a deal is that, Lord Monckton?
I don't think one can really underestimate the significance of this. It's very, very important. And I'll tell you a bit of history. Back in 2004, Putin asked one of his scientific advisors, in fact, his chief scientific advisor at the time, Dr. Andrei Illarionov, whom I know, whether global warming was a problem or not, and could he please find out by holding an international conference of experts at the Kremlin. So what Illarionov did, he looked around the world and he found the country throughout the world that was the most true-believing country in this whole rubbish as far as the governing class was concerned. And that country, of course, was the United Kingdom. And so he invited Sir David King, then the government's chief scientist, and now its chief negotiator at the Paris summit on the climate question. And in fact, I was in Cambridge yesterday to hear Sir David King give a talk at the mathematics department, and a lot of rubbish he talked as well. But what was significant about this 2004 conference was that Illarionov also invited skeptics. Now, at that time, he didn't know of me, and I wasn't really a skeptic at that time. I hadn't looked at the science, and when I did, I became a skeptic. But he invited noted skeptics from all around the world. And when Sir David King arrived at Sheremetyevo Airport, and he found various skeptics getting off planes from all over the place and heading off to the government cars, he turned round and tried to get back into the British plane and go back to the UK, because he is entirely incapable of debating this issue. I know, because I've debated it with him before, and his blood was all over the floor at the end of it. And so he was pretty much arrested by the FSB and made to go to the Kremlin, where he was made to give his presentation. And towards the end of it, Dr. Roy Spencer, who keeps the satellite temperature records that show no global warming now for 18 years, 6 months, 18 years, 9 months, got up and said, "Oh, for heaven's sake, Sir David, you're talking complete rubbish about this particular point. The facts are as follows." And King, who is completely incapable of taking any criticism or arguing any point on climate science, because he doesn't know any, he knows the party line, but that's all he knows, flounced out, and the FSB made to stop him. And Illarionov went up to the lectern and just waved them aside and said, "No, let him go, because Sir David King has disgraced the name of Britain, disgraced the name of science, disgraced the name of King, and disgraced the name of knighthood." He said, one thing he has done, though, is he has told us just what rubbish the official case in support of the global warming alarm is, and the view that I think the Russian Academy of Sciences will take is a skeptical one, because the skeptics here have been willing to put their point forward in debate, willing to be challenged by the other side and have met those challenges well. Now, I know this happened because I have spoken to Illarionov himself about it, as well as to several others who were there.